Hi, everybody. Michelle with Triangle Social Media, here to come live every Wednesday at noon, interviewing business owners in my community and yours. And I'm excited to have my friend Joe from Resource Room NC. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you come on and share a little bit about what you and Sam do over in Holly Springs. Why don't you give
Mhm.
us a quick intro?
Sure. So Samara and I started Resource Room in 2015 in New York. We recently moved down to Holly Springs about a little over a year ago now. And we began our business with our grand opening about 7 weeks ago at 2100 Crossway Lane off North Main. And we do a full service learning center, including tutoring for all subjects, K through 12, some college, depending on the subject, SAT, ACT, college admissions, and a large offering of STEM programs, which are about to start in 2022.
So much stuff to offer. Excited about all that. And I know that your audience is growing and a lot of people are interested, whether they be public school, private school, magnet school, homeschool, whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. And you have something to offer for everyone. So I just have a few questions I'd love to ask you, and so that
Sure.
we can get some more information out to the audience. What would you say the best way to prepare high schoolers is for the SAT or ACT test?
Well, that's a great question because actually we're moving into that season now. Most high school juniors will take the SAT for the first time in the spring semester of their junior year, whether it be in March on the Saturday administration of the test, which is the traditional one where students will pay and go and take it outside of school. And in some cases, students will receive an SAT or an ACT during their school day, depending on their school and on their district.
Mhm.
As you decide to start to prep your students for the SAT or ACT, the number one thing that students need to know is which test is a better fit for them. It's often something that's overlooked. A lot of times, students will listen to teachers or guidance counselors or friends whose older siblings have taken the exam, and this one's easier or that one's better. And honestly, there's really no way to know until a student has taken a full length practice test of both of those exams in order to get a feel for what they like. I always usually equate it with my clients to a Pepsi Coke kind of thing. There's really no way to know which one you prefer until you've actually tried both.
Okay, good answer and good things to think about. So tell us about, I know you have an event coming up
Mhm.
where students can come and take the test and practice and go through it. So you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So on December 4th and on December 5th, starting at 9 a.m., we're going to have a free SAT full length diagnostic for any potential sophomores or juniors who are looking to take the SAT exam. Again, like I said before, the practice exam is very important in helping them understand what exactly their strengths and weaknesses are, and again, which one they like better or not.
Mhm.
The
Right.
SAT is the one that students generally do prefer, although it's not true of every student. But the SAT tends to be a bit more forgiving on the time requirements, which many students feel a bit more comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
However, it does have a no calculator section for math, which can really perturb some students as well. So that's why it's really a great idea to take a practice exam. And also, I want to mention one thing. People who are unfamiliar with the SAT process often will tell students to go and take the SAT exam officially to see how they do and not prep for it. That's really, from our experience, not a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
One, when the official score comes back, even if a student didn't prep, sometimes it'll have a mental impact, a barrier that they feel that they now have to try to pass. And it's sort of an artificial barrier because they just weren't prepped for it. And
Mm.
also, if you do take the SAT, not only will you pay for it to see how you do, but there's also experimental sections on the SAT as well that happen during the official administration. So your student will actually be sitting there for about an extra hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Um, and where if you do a full length practice exam with us, for example, the student would just take the material that needs to be graded to reflect the score.
Wow, that is really a strong point to consider. And I just feel like it would ease people's minds. You know, they're going to be nervous, especially if it's their first time, and they're going to be a little bit nervous. But going through it with you, they can ask questions, and it might just create a much more relaxed atmosphere when they do the official test, right?
It should, and frankly, the fact that I mean, even though you don't have to submit every test score that you take, so you technically could bury an SAT score that didn't come out favorable for the student. it's still, like I said, when that official score report comes, it's a little bit different than if, for example, we were just to hand a student and say, hey, look, if you were to take this tomorrow, this is
Yeah.
what you would receive. And so it's better in sort of easing them into the process, and starting them off with a much more, I think, like you said, it's a bit more of a comfortable situation to do it that way.
Yes, and you guys have a great setup there in Holly Springs. I've been there. It's a nice atmosphere. You know, it's good to have supportive, pleasant people around you that are encouraging, right? Um, Now, I want to ask you about the essay. How powerful is that, the impact of the essay? What can you share about that?
Sure. So again, with college admission season right now, we were just talking about the juniors who will be looking really for 2022, 2023 admissions, but the 2021 admissions, which are happening right now, most students will be approaching their regular application deadlines. Most of the early application deadlines have passed. November 1st, November 15th is often the common deadlines for many early admissions applications, but the regular admissions deadlines will go well into December, sometimes into January. And schools that are rolling admission will have, basically, you'll be able to submit your application anytime you would like. Clearly, for the more competitive schools, the ones that are hard to get into, where a lot of people want to go there, they tend to have stricter application deadlines. The essay itself has become a very important factor in college admissions,
Mhm.
particularly since COVID and when a lot of schools went test optional. Partly because in many areas students could not test. They could not find an SAT exam that they could take. I know that that was the case up north for quite some time. We had a number of students who were trying to go as far up towards Canada as they could to try
Wow.
to get an SAT exam in, and were still unable to do it. So the college admissions essay has sort of risen in prominence because it is the one area where uh, college admissions counselors can get a feel for the type of student that they'll be bringing onto campus. They'll learn a
Mhm.
lot more about the student than they can just from their transcripts. If they have an SAT or they don't have an SAT, this is the one area where the student can really sell themselves as to the type of person that they are, their values, their goals, their ideals, what they're looking for in a school, and maybe why that schools that they're applying to is fitting for them if it's a supplemental essay as opposed to just the Common App essay. There's a number of areas for the student to really let the college admissions counselor know this is the type of
Mhm.
student you'd be bringing on campus if you were to accept me.
Wow, that's important. Before I ask you my next question, I just want to encourage anyone who's seeing this video, whether it be live or hashtag replay later. The video will stay in the news feed on the different platforms where it's being shared. Please go ahead and put your questions for Joe, and connect with him and get more information about the services that they offer. And on that note, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the different types of tutoring services, because I know with the pandemic and with kids being homeschooled, for some that was positive, for some that was a struggle. And so what kind of effects have you seen from your perspective, the effects of the shutdown and kids being home, and now they're trying to get back in? Are they catching up? And how can your services help them?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's actually becoming more and more apparent every day. I think many people thought that any issues that developed from the shutdowns and the lack of in-person schooling would be apparent immediately upon returning to school, and that's actually not the case, because it takes schools a few months to sort of ramp up and get into a groove where homework becomes consistent, testing becomes consistent, midterms start to happen. For example, if you're a high school student, so we're actually starting to see a lot of these impacts sort of manifest in a higher degree of severity now at this point in the school year than we did, say, in September. We're seeing this particularly amongst the younger students, which I think for anyone who had a kindergartner, first grade, second grade, third grade student learning virtually and was trying to work at home at the same time, found it, they knew that the level of instruction virtually especially for the younger group of students who maybe couldn't read yet, were planning to learn how to read in that grade, or had just learned how to read in the previous grade, that the phonics, the reading mechanics, the comprehension is nowhere near the level at this point that it usually is for those students. And that doesn't necessarily indicate a reading disability, which many people are starting to assume that their child has. That's not necessarily the case. we're seeing for the younger students a really big deficit in their basic ability to do phonics, sounding out words, using letter blends, like, for example, the very simple CH or SH at the beginning of a word, or your ending blends, your EDs and your INGs. These are all things that we naturally do and process, but a student who's learning how to read does not know that yet. They don't know the changes in the sounds, the hard C or the soft C, or how certain letters can sound like a J and not be a J, right? For example, the G. So when you look at these things in totality, you can start to see that students who did not have foundational reading skills prior to the shutdown and going to virtual learning are having a great deal of difficulty catching up right now. And so across the board in both my North Carolina location and my New York location, we are seeing a high number of calls for that K through 2, K through 3 grade level for remediation.
Wow. And so when you do tutoring services for that age, what kind of resources do you offer the parents, or do you work with them also so that they can be doing other things at home in between their sessions with you?
So it's very hard to work with your own student, and I think most parents are going to agree with that. I have a 4-year-old son, and the lovely 13-year-old girl who lives across the street from us is the one that works with him on his reading. We tell her what to do. We say, hey, can you run through these sight words with him, or can you work with these sounds with him, because he won't do it with us. So I teach her how to teach him. So it's very difficult for students to work with their own parents. So that's number one. So if you're having difficulty doing that and you're finding frustration, don't feel bad about that. Across the board, that is very, very common. So as far as parents helping, it can be very challenging. As far as what we can do, well, one, we're not the parents. So that creates this sort of third-party intermediary where students generally feel more comfortable and more willing to engage. We are working right now heavily on basic phonics, letter formation, sound formation, and working with a number of students in helping them sort of bridge that gap. If we do recognize that a student has potentially a reading disability, possibly showing signs of dyslexia or some other type of reading disability, because the spectrum for dyslexia is very, very large. It's not just transposing letters, which is what commonly people believe, those B's and the D's, which is actually quite common amongst all students, not necessarily someone who may be showing signs of dyslexia. So if that is the case, we would obviously recommend someone out to a reading specialist, someone who's maybe trained in the reading program Orton Gillingham, which is excellent program for struggling readers. But in most cases right now, what we're just seeing is a basic phonics deficit and having some difficulty putting those sounds and words together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I want to invite everybody once again to connect with Joe. Scrolling along the bottom of the video, you'll see all the contact info, but I'm going to ask Joe to put his links, especially the SAT practice. Put the link to that event, and wherever you see this, I will share that with you separately. But definitely encourage people to find out, who's in your community, what business owners can you support, and how can you support them and receive support for your family. Because the tutoring services, as he has mentioned, all ages, right? Do you also help adults who might need some help?
We do, we do, absolutely. Depending on the need, we have worked with a number of adults who have decided to go back to school later in life, or some people who have decided that they didn't, that they would wanted to get their GED and they didn't have the opportunity to graduate high school when they were younger. So yes, absolutely. If it's academic based, there's not much that we can't provide on that level.
And that provides so much support at every age level. And so thank you so much for coming on today, Joe. We will definitely look for the comments. If there's any questions, as I mentioned, whenever you see the video and you have a question, you can either post it or just contact Joe directly. All the contact details will be there. And we will see you all next Wednesday. Every Wednesday at noon, I try to interview different people, and I would love to connect with other business owners in the area. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to come on Social Soundbites. So Joe, you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.